right, welcome back. Joining us in studio now is Peter Halpin, the Executive Director at the Association of Atlantic Universities. Now, a new survey from the organization shows that international student enrollment is declining by quite a bit. It's down 28% across Atlantic Canadian institutions, and that's fewer than 6,500 students than last year. So we'll get right into it, Peter. What's driving this steep decline? Is it strictly the federal international student cap, or are there other issues that are at play here?
Well, the cap plays a great role in what's happening, but there's also other Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada policies that also are affecting the choices that international students are making. There's an increased financial requirement of international students. The visa processing continues to be a bit of an issue. And so, by and large, what's happened is Canada's brand internationally has been very badly tarnished. And there's a perception that Canada is no longer a welcoming country for international students, and they have choices. There's many other countries in the world competing hard for the same cohort of students, and regrettably, Canada is losing out, and Atlantic Canada in particular.
Disproportionately, are Atlantic Canadian universities, institutions of higher learning, being impacted greater by this federal cap than, say, counterparts in larger provinces like Ontario, Quebec, British
Yes,
Columbia?
we are. And, you know, the federal government's objective was to reduce the total number of international students across the country, universities and colleges, by about 35%. Yeah. Our universities in Atlantic Canada have lost about 36% of international students. That's a big hit for our region, and not just for our universities, but for the region's economy and population growth strategies. International students are one of the best sources of new citizens for our region, which we are in dire need of.
What do we, based on that though, what do we know about the percentage of, say, international students who graduate that decide to stick around here, say, in Atlantic Canada?
It's a very impressive number. Over 60% of international students studying at our universities want to stay in Atlantic Canada following their graduation. That's because they've had a high-quality university experience, they've been welcomed in the communities where they have attended school, and they very much want to stay here. You know, an interesting fact that just became known to me a year ago is that of the startup businesses coming out of our universities every year, which there are quite a number, 60% are led by international students.
Right. We rely on them being here. Not having them here, what is that cost to the economy? I know it's still in year one of this federal cap, but do we get an understanding of what type of economic impact, say, it's having on
the overall economic impact of universities in Atlantic Canada is north of $2 billion annually. So international students make up a big component of that economic impact. So, you know, when you think of especially the universities outside of the larger urban centers, you know, Acadia in Wolfville, St. FX in Antigonish, or Mount Allison in Sackville, New Brunswick, the impact of international students in those communities is very significant.
We understand that from the federal government perspective, Ottawa has been very clear. They said there's a housing crisis right across the board. We need to address it. And one of those, as I understand, is this federal cap on international students. How do you address that argument that they're trying to, you know, address a situation that a lot of people are feeling? We know the situation of the housing crisis and how it's impacting.
Well, you're quite
people.
right. I mean, that was part of the rationale that the federal government presented when they introduced the student cap, was to reduce the pressure on affordable housing. I believe that international students got swept up in that concern about affordable, accessible housing. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, if you look at in a university community like Halifax, where I live, you know, there's an awful lot of apartments for rent. So in one sense...
Is there, though? It's hard to say, because we've done numerous stories where we talk with young families who are hopping from one-year lease to another and unable to get into the housing market. I'm wondering if we need to see how this cap is going to play out and if housing can keep up. That's...
Well, there was a story in the Globe and Mail on the weekend of a lot of landlords across the country who are now really feeling the impact of the loss of international students on rental properties.
What does the institution themselves have a role to play in perhaps housing then? Where does that come into the conversation? Or is there just not enough?
Virtually all of our universities have on-campus student residences. All have plans to expand student housing. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we are publicly funded universities, and that requires investment from both provincial governments and the federal government, quite frankly.
And it can't happen overnight either, unfortunately, right?
You know, construction takes time.
Yeah.
But certainly all of our institutions have plans to expand student housing on campus. And I'm in conversations regularly now with the rental housing providers and talking to them about, you know, what we can do together to make the international student experience in particular better for those students.
Given where we are right now with the decline in enrollment of international students and that cap that's in place, what would you like to see happen next? What have we learned so far?
Well, we've been working on an initiative for the past year called Atlantic Education Destination. And we are creating a regional coalition of like-minded organizations, ourselves, universities, Atlantic colleges, ACOA, Public Policy Forum, Atlantic, the Atlantic Chambers of Commerce, Springboard Atlantic. And the whole purpose is to develop a regional enrollment strategy that it would be a collaborative affair. We're engaged with provincial governments as well.
Have you had a chance to meet all together now, or is this in the early stages?
Not all together, but, you know, a lot of conversations.
Interesting.
We recently met with the Honorable Lena Diab, Minister of Immigration federally, who's an MP from Halifax West, and we apprised her of our plans around Atlantic Education Destination. She was receptive.
And familiar with the area.
Very much so. She's a former international student, and she has a real understanding of the impact of the loss of these students on our institutions and on our communities and on the region. So we introduced the Atlantic Education Destination concept to the minister. As I say, she was intrigued by it and very receptive, and we're in a positive dialogue with her about it.
Well, I think we have a follow-up interview in the works already, hearing about this. That is all the time we have for now. We have to cut it short, Peter, but I want to thank you for joining us. That's Peter Halpin. He is the Executive Director of the Association of Atlantic Canadian Universities.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Stick around. We're going to go to commercial break, but we've got more news on the other side.